Welcome to the Find Creative Expression podcast, conversations about art and creativity. I'm your host, Sarah Crawford, author, musician, and playwright. You can find the show notes and other information at findcreativeexpression.com. And let's get going. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of the Find Creative Expression podcast. Coming up, I have an interview with painter Michelle Sakhai. You know, I always link to people's work on findcreativeexpression.com, and you should definitely go check out her paintings because they are really beautiful. Anyway, so we had a great conversation, so stick around for that. So actually, I have some creative news to report. I've been working on a play about a meditation retreat. It's all women. It's based on a lot of the women I know at my church, Unity North Atlanta Church. You know, I feel like I always need to specify that it's not a normal church or that, you know, it's a hippie church. So I'm in the middle of drafting that play, but then the other night I started a new book. It's not actually young adult. It's an adult, more literary fiction book. It's about a 38-year-old Broadway dancer who has a rare genetic condition called spinocerebellar ataxia, often abbreviated to SCA, that affects balance. So after she has several falls in the show that she's in and she can't get cast in anything else for a few months, she leaves New York and comes home to live with her family in Atlanta. Now, her dad also has SCA and is now having to use a wheelchair. The whole novel is about what happens when you lose a big piece of your identity and you have to find yourself outside of that. So it's a little autobiographical in that SCA also runs in my family, and it's starting to really affect my balance. Like, I'm often stumbling around or falling, and people tend to think I'm just drunk or something. But no, I actually just have really horrible balance. Like, I can't really walk up or down stairs unless I have something to hold on to. I can't really walk on the treadmill at the gym unless I am holding on the entire time. I have to have, like, handles in the shower, you know, things like that. But, you know, my grandfather was in a wheelchair towards the end of his life, and both my dad and my aunt have to use walkers. So it can also affect things like speech and coordination. My handwriting, for example, is really bad, especially when I compare it to something I wrote like 10 years ago. So I've had the idea to write this book for a long time. But this past week, it kind of just started pouring out of me. It feels like a book that's really important for me to write right now. And, you know, the protagonist, Paige, she has problems with balance, literally, but she also has problems with balance in her life. Like, she's been a Broadway dancer for the last 18 years, and that's pretty much everything she's done. Like, she hasn't had many relationships or friendships, and, you know, she is close with her family, but there hasn't been much to her life except dancing. Anyway, I have been writing the play and the book at the same time, which I don't normally do, so we'll see how that goes. But I don't really have any self-imposed deadlines with either project, so I actually think that will help. Another exciting thing that happened to me recently, I wrote a play in 2012 called The Snow Globe. It was actually my thesis for grad school. It's a children's fantasy play about a boy who's stuck inside of a snow globe. So it was published by Youth Plays in 2013, but there haven't been any performances. So I figured I was just going to have to wait out the contract with Youth Plays before I could do anything with it. But then a couple of weeks ago, I checked Twitter, and this girl has tweeted a picture of all these kids in little costumes standing on stage, having just performed a production of The Snow Globe. So I was like, oh, that's what that random payment from Youth Plays was about. But anyway, it was really, really cool to see all those kids in a play that I wrote. A big thing that helped to shape me into the person that I am is my experience in theater as a teenager. So it was like, a circle of theater life moment. Oh, I will also link to that tweet with the picture of the kids in the snow globe because it's really cute. So I'll link to that on findcreativeexpression.com. I also wanted to say, I think it's really great that I've talked to so many people on this podcast that are creating really interesting work. The painter that I'm talking to today, Michelle Sakhai, her work is really great. You should definitely go check it out. Rachel Marshall, who I had on last episode, I was recently watching a documentary that she was in called My Body Is Not Obscene. It's on Plex. It's streaming for free, so anybody can watch it. And it was really, really good. It's about, nude art and kind of the history of nudity. And yeah, it was a really interesting documentary. And I really liked the messages about kind of body positivity and self-acceptance. I also started watching the web series that she is in, that she was talking about a little bit last time on YouTube, called The Cultists, and that show is pretty hilarious so far. The episodes are pretty short, so if you just need like a quick show to watch to make you laugh, definitely check that out. But I just wanted to say that I'm really grateful to have so many interesting artists and creative people in my life, or introduced to me, and I'm really having a lot of fun on this podcast, and I feel like I'm having a lot of really cool conversations with artists and creatives. So definitely go back and scroll through the episodes on Spotify or YouTube or Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and just see what kind of sparks your interest. I've had a lot of really great people on here. I mean, everybody I've had on here has been great. So definitely, go check out the backlist of episodes. Not that there's a big, huge backlist, but hey, there's 21 episodes before this, and we're coming up on a year that I've been doing this. I started this in August. So I'm going to be doing a kind of a special episode to mark the year anniversary. More about that later. For now, let's just go ahead and get into the interview. Hey everyone, I am here with Michelle Sakhai. Michelle Sakhai is an abstract expressionist artist who brings spirituality into her paintings. Her work derives influences from her Japanese and Persian roots, and she uses oils and mixed mediums. Her solo exhibitions include the 2012 exhibition Awakenings, shown at Somart Cultural Center in San Francisco, and the 2016 exhibition Treasured Elements at the Madeline Jordan Fine Art Gallery. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast. I'm excited to get to chat with you.
Same here.
So how did you get into painting?
Wow. So I think as soon as I could really pick up a drawing material with my hands, that's when I started painting. It was like as soon as I can grab, and I was a little kid, and I think the creativity was always there, and my fascination with colors and expressing what I'm feeling and how I'm seeing the world, and just kind of art. I was always into art, all kinds of every aspect of art. So
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I've done this, this is now episode 22. And I feel like everybody that I've interviewed has pretty much the same answers to that question of like, how did you get into art? Everyone's just like, oh, I've been doing it since I was a kid, like since I learned how.
Yeah, I don't think I ever got into art. Art got into me
Right.
very early
Yeah,
on.
no, I love that. I love that. That's how I feel too. Okay, so in 2004, you received a BA in art history with a minor in fine arts from Hofstra University. And then in 2010, you received a master's in fine arts from the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. So how did your education influence the work that you are creating now?
So I had a really interesting growing up experience because my parents were always they they're a family of collectors. I grew up with art around me, so I was very fortunate to grow up in that kind of home and setting. So I started taking classes early on, watercolors from age, I don't know, 6 maybe, and then transitioned into oils at 13. And then after that, studied it throughout college, and then studied in a couple of different art schools abroad, including in Barcelona and in Venice and a couple of others, and then went on to, like you said, to San Francisco for my master's, and then ended up teaching art at Berkeley for a little bit. So I spent a lot of time in school. Like I even took workshops in between all of this at several different universities, including NYU, SVA.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's not, yeah, like I was studying in art school for most of my life until, I went into my master's. So I did a lot of schooling, and it was mostly academic. So, all of you art people listening, you know what I'm talking about. It's like so much studio time of, you're on the horse. And I mean, I remember coming home and needing to ice my arms from portrait drawing. And
Right.
it was a lot. And so I had this very academic background, which, now I look back and I say, wow, it was such a gift because it was a great foundation for me.
Right.
It's like I compare it to singing, and like all of these, really talented singers, like that are contemporary, be like Beyonce, who started opera singing, or not opera, sorry, choir at church,
Yeah.
So it's just like a great foundation. It's like practicing the scales, even like in a musician too. I grew up playing the violin also. So I had this very strong foundation. And even though I knew I was never going to be a portrait painter, and that was never, but it was so helpful in so many ways. And all the still life drawing and painting that I've done. And then after school, I would go to the Nassau County Museum of Art. It's a tiny little museum in Long Island, New York. And I would go in the evenings from like 6 to 10 and do their drawing classes at night. So I was like, I was always taking classes, always.
Right.
And then here I am as an abstract painter, which I would have never in a million years thought I would be an abstract painter, because I hated anything to do with abstract. And I would avoid taking classes with abstract as well. So I just thought I was such a purist. I was really into plein air painting. I was a landscape artist for 20 some years. I was always, into that kind of impressionistic style of art. And I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing today.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I know what you're talking about because my MFA is in playwriting. And I primarily write plays and fiction. But I remember taking a creative nonfiction class, and I mean, it's it was never something that I was planning to write after that class, but just the practice of kind of having to write something that actually happened and not being able to like just invent things. It really kind of helped ground my other writing that I did, after that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so true. So true.
Okay, so spirituality is really important to me. So I'm pretty active at my church, Unity North Atlanta, and I'm really into meditation, the whole thing. And I can see from your work, spirituality is really important to you. When I look at your work, I really see like an illustration of, the interconnectedness of all things. And you're a primordial sound meditation instructor through the Chopra Center, as well as a certified Reiki master. So how has your exploration of spirituality helped your work to evolve?
I think of my work as, a reflection of me and myself on a deeper level, so I mean, it's a personal thing for me, but also I think generally speaking with art, it's a reflection of the artist and their soul and, without their ego. And I think that, as as I've evolved, I say as I evolve, my art evolves because, I mean, you could see the art that I was creating throughout the years and how much it's changed, because I feel I've changed,
Right.
I wonder, was it the spirituality that started coming in, that I was getting more aligned with myself, within myself, and going on that path? Like, was that what influenced my work to change, or did my work start evolving and then it was like, I don't know.
Right.
But I do feel that my work definitely helps guide me in my life, and it always has. So
right. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I feel like it kind of goes, in a circle, really. I mean, at least that's how I feel about writing. Because I mean, I feel like the more I explore, my spirituality and meditation and everything, my writing kind of goes to a deeper level. And then sometimes, my writing helps me kind of explore spiritual things, more. So I feel like it sometimes can be both,
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that.
So, like you were saying, you're an extensive world traveler. You went to Japan to visit family every summer growing up, and you studied in Venice and Barcelona, like you were saying. So what has traveling the world taught you about art and creation?
Well, I'll go back to when I was a plein air painter. That's a French term for landscape painting, for those listening that don't know what I'm talking about. I would go, and that was a big part of what I loved to do when I was younger. And I would go venture into all these cities, and when I was studying abroad in Venice and Spain, and I would go and just kind of paint around all the beautiful and the south of France too. I spent some time there doing that, and you learn a lot about the culture doing that, and the light over there is so spectacular and so different. And I think, just being in the environment, and you really learn about the culture and the people, and you're observing for hours and hours a day. And usually I was, in town, and so I was going to all these cities, and then I had a phase where I was, or say a series where I was doing golf courses, and so then I was going to California and Pebble Beach and all the courses, and having that experience with golfers, and it was just, so it was definitely interesting to be traveling to all these cool sites and having that experience. And I loved being outdoors and painting because you're like one with nature, but then you're also interacting with people and everything
Right.
around you. So just so like immersive, like and then it would all go into my work. And so when I would go home and reflect on these paintings, it's like, they're so juicy because you like sit there and you remember the temperature, the weather, who was around, who were those people that came up to you and were talking to you while you were painting, and the people you met during that time, or the time of year and the travel. It was just, there's so much memory jam packed into this one landscape. So I loved those days. And since then, now, I still, travel is still a big part of my life, but just in a different way. And then having the experience growing up in Japan every summer and spending all that time there and being influenced by the art and culture there, which is a completely different style than the Western, style. So,
Right.
and that was, that definitely influenced my work as well. And I think I'm now going back to stylistically, I connect with the Japanese aesthetic a lot.
Yeah, that's really cool. I kind of, I haven't traveled quite as much as you have, well, or as much at all, but but I find like I get really inspired when I'm in another country. Like, this happened to me in Mexico and in Scotland. When I'm like on a bus in another country, I get like really get inspired, and I'll just like sit there and write like so much, because it's just there's something really exciting about traveling through like unfamiliar landscapes. And yeah, so but I mean
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, and that's interesting about the golf courses. My brother is like super into golf, so I'm sure he would love to travel to different golf courses.
Yeah. No, and it's just, as I'm sure we all travel, and the people you meet along the way, and there's just so much that you take on with you. And then and for me, at that time period when I was painting the landscapes, it really came through. I mean, we would be on the train. I remember going from in Italy and going into France, and we would just hop off the train and paint. I mean, it was special times.
Right, yeah. I'm sure the past year has been difficult, if not being able to travel and everything. But at least it's starting to like get back to normal, so that's good.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, if you had to choose a favorite place you visited, what would it be?
Ooh, I do get asked this a lot, and I say, well, it depends on, what your trip is. But I think personally, because it's so close to home, and, I would say Japan.
Right.
There's so much in, from the countryside to the cities, and it is, so different. And then you get the culture of just, the Japanese culture in general, and it's so different from anywhere else in the world, I have to say. And I love the food, and so much of the culture is food, right? So
Right.
I love the food there, and I think there's something for everyone in Japan. So
Yeah,
that would be
yeah.
my favorite.
Yeah, I think it's, it's also probably meaningful that you have family there, and you're kind of tied to the place, like with your identity and everything. Like I feel like that matters.
Yes, I think so too.
Like I have a lot of Scottish heritage, so when I was in Scotland, like I definitely felt that connection to the place. So on your website, you write, energy flows onto the canvas, emotion takes a unique form. My process feels unbounded, limitless. I have discovered that in this place, I am working at a soul level. So first of all, I love that, by the way. But how has painting and creating art helped you to kind of understand yourself and your place in the world?
I think for me, painting has always been my like inner language, and how I connect, how the, you know, ego Michelle connects with the deeper part of Michelle, of me. So that's been my way of going inwards, and I feel like it is a kind of meditation for me. When we sit and we meditate, and you know, we breathe, and that allows us to go inwards. I have that similar experience when I'm painting. So I, you know, that's when I feel I align with my higher self, and through that I'm, you know, I get in touch with my deeper emotions, and you know, I can be still and be quiet and go in. And I think, you know, in today's society, we don't spend a lot of time doing that. We're always on our phones, we're always going, you know, outside of ourselves. So that, for me, that's a way of nurturing myself, and painting gives me that opportunity to be still within myself, to feel what I'm feeling and to express it. And I think by doing that, by expressing those emotions, whatever way we find is really the way that we get to transform them. So yeah, in a nutshell, I'd say that's what.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. And you know, I think there is something specifically about like visual arts, you know, like painting, whether it's painting or even just like coloring in a coloring book, which I do a lot of. But I mean, because I'm not much of a painter, although I have, you know, tried like painting before. And for me, it was always more about like the process of doing it than as opposed to like the final product, because I'm just not really that visual. But yeah, I feel like it is kind of like a meditation, and it really kind of helps you to like be in the moment and be present. And you know, I think that's probably also why I'm obsessed with watching Bob Ross. Like I watch Bob Ross all the time, and I feel like it's just like it's soothing, it's like calming. It really helps me to kind of like center.
Yeah, no, I hear that a lot from people. You're not the first person that said that about Bob. Like people enjoy that, you know, process of watching, because you almost feel like you're doing it through him.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I always tell people, like, just, you know, you don't have to think you're a creative person or to have creative experience. Like even if you're just kind of sitting there yourself and just, you know, playing with the colors and just spending that time to, you know, paint how you're feeling, or you know, let your inner self be your guide to the marks that you make, and whatever comes out, you know, whatever comes out comes out. It's like not having that expectation of making something beautiful, and letting go of that part of it, and just focusing on yourself, you know, your breath and your emotions. And I think people will be surprised with what they create by doing that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like anytime I've tried to like paint or do watercolors or draw anything, or you know, even just coloring in a coloring book, it's like that's kind of the area where I haven't really tried to be an artist. You know, I've been a musician, I've been a performer, I've been a writer, you know. So it's like where all of those areas I'm like, you know, I'm concerned about making the final product like as good as possible. You know, that painting or doing something visual is just strictly for the act of like creation and meditation, and not, I mean, sometimes, you know, I don't even like show it to people. So it's like not having that pressure to produce meaningful art is like, I think it can sometimes really be a great tool. And I feel like creativity can be like that for everyone, even whether you consider yourself an artist or not, you know.
Yeah.
So in 2016, your work was the focus of the book Awakenings, the paintings of Michelle Sakhai. So what was the process of creating and releasing that book like?
So like I was saying earlier, I used to be a landscape artist. So I had this transition going into abstract art when I was living in San Francisco. And I think the first 2 years of that, I didn't paint for 1 year. I moved back to New York and I was looking for a studio, and I just, I took this time off, and that was the longest time I didn't create. And so I think when I finally got my studio, I just kind of so much poured out of me, and I had so much bottled up or something. And I ended up, I think I made like 200 pieces.
Wow.
I ended, yeah. And I mean, a lot of them are small. They were 12 by 12 inches. So they weren't that big, but I decided to make this book, which was a compilation of these 200 paintings and personal quotes. And the personal quotes were, the quotes that would come to me while I was working, and I would just jot them down. And these quotes have been, I must have been probably for like 5-6 years. I would have these quotes in my notebook, and I thought to myself, I want to merge the two, because it really would come to me while I'm working. And I thought it went hand in hand with my work. So yeah, so that was the birth of it. And I remember I was having a show. So I'll just back up for a second. The series that I created first for my abstract series was actually a cloud series. So they were paintings of the sky. And I didn't know why I was like so drawn to these skies at the time, but it was, now looking back, it really is the perfect transition from landscape painting and, figurative, non-figurative art. So,
Right.
Skies are so abstract. So now it makes sense, because it was the bridge from leaving, the landscape world. So I did a series of cloud paintings, sky, a bunch of sky paintings, and the title Awakening came to me in the middle of the night. And so that was the birth to all the abstract work that I do now. Then, and then I was doing all that, all the abstract work that just kind of came out of me in 2 years. So I decided after that to make the book. So.
Right. No, I think that's really cool, that you kind of transitioned into abstract paintings, like from the sky paintings. That makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, and I think, like, that the next, people always ask, well, what do you think started that? Because it was very organic, and I wanted to break away from the figurative artwork, and I started looking deeper within myself and, with my work. And that's when I started on the spiritual journey. And I started, working with a shaman, and this was going back to when I was living in San Francisco. So I had this introduction to this, metaphysical world.
Right.
And then that opened the door. And that's when my work started changing, and I felt I started changing and evolving. And then little by little, it just, it became more and more that way.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So, you mentioned that you're also a teacher. You've taught painting at the University of California in Berkeley, and transformative art at the Harlem Hospital Center. So, what is one thing you've learned from your students?
So my students at the Harlem Hospital are all kids, mostly. I'd say they're under 18. So it was a very different experience there than at the university. But I mean, I love work, and they're patients. So they're there because they're suffering in some way. And I have to say that I feel like, I get so much more out of it than they do. And when they're there and when they're working, they're so happy, and they're focused in what they're doing, and they're so present.
Right.
They're in the moment, and they're not, complaining it's amazing. I've been there for a few years. I stopped going right at COVID, but I can't say I ever had a kid complain about, whatever their pain was or why they were there.
Right.
They were so into the work, and they were just so happy. And I think that energy is what I take away the most from working with them.
Yeah. I imagine art, the process of creating art would be very healing for them as well, and just having that moment to be present, like you were saying, and just the act of creation.
Yeah, a lot of these kids come from all sorts of backgrounds, and they may come from homes that don't support art or don't even have someone to really sit with them. So it's a blessing for me, and I know that it's a blessing for them to have, they don't to even be given the material,
Right.
and the space for them to just work and yeah, and have that safe environment.
Right, right, exactly. So what are you working on right now?
So right now I have 3 shows coming up in October. I'm working on a brand new show, a nature inspired show in Rhode Island at Chas Gallery.
Hmm.
And I have another exhibit happening at Space Gallery in New York City in the Lower East Side.
Oh, cool.
And another exhibit in Maryland, a group show. So I'm preparing for these shows in October. I have another painting that I just created at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco, and it's my 4th painting there, and that just went up in the lobby yesterday.
Oh, cool.
So I'm gonna be doing a visit there in a week for like social media and photos and interviews and stuff. But and what else? There's just so much going. There's always so much going on.
Right.
So it's a great time. I've been super busy even throughout COVID. It was so busy for me. I was creating nonstop, and like you mentioned in the beginning of this, I did a Garden of Peace show at Hofstra University, which is what I wanted to have going on during a dark time like COVID.
Right.
To just bring some more light into the world. And so I did a whole floral show, and it's really beautiful. I'd like to think it was really beautiful. And yeah, and it's just, yeah, we're working on some other shows too, but those are the 3 right now. Oh, and I have a show in Japan in November as well. So these are all on my
Oh,
website.
wow.
I keep everything updated on there. So if you just go to upcoming shows on the future tab, you'll see that.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So what books or TV shows or movies, music, other artists, etc., are you really into right now?
Right now, because I was talking about all the floral that I've been doing from like right before COVID times, I've really been into Gustav Klimt's work.
Mm.
I just love his florals and his design work, and it has this Art Deco feel that I love. Art Deco, and of course the gold, because I do work. I'm a metal, and I work with metal leafing, so
Right.
I connect with his work so much. And when people look at my work now, they usually say, "Oh, I feel because of Klimt there," and I say, "Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
inspired by him."
I didn't immediately think of that when I
Mm-hmm.
saw your work, but I see it totally now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So do you like paint to music?
I
Or like
do.
do you have anything that you're really into right now, music wise?
Oh, I mean, people would laugh if they saw my my Pandora account, because I listen to everything. Like when I say everything, I really mean everything. Like from classical music um I mean, I guess everything but jazz. Maybe now that I think about it, because even country, like I would say, I used to say I don't like any country, but now that I'm getting older, I feel like there are some that I go into and play it,
Yeah.
here and there. But I'm all over the board. I like hip hop. I like R&B. I mean, everything. There's
Right.
not one artist that. Um, there are a couple of favorites. Like I do love the Lumineers.
Hmm.
They are a favorite of mine. But I also, yeah, I hate to name one band, because I feel like I I listen to everything. So
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Okay, so I have kind of a big question that I ask everyone.
Mhm.
So why do you think art is important?
It's such a great question. Why do I think? I believe it's important because I believe it heals. Yeah. I believe it heals us. It heals, the person creating it, person, observing it. I believe it. And I do. I mean, even in my email, I think you and I had some email exchange. On my bottom of my email, I write art is a force of healing.
Right.
And I do genuinely believe that. I mean, it's been healing me. And I really do feel like it connects us on a deeper level, and it helps because we all, I think, to some degree, walking being in this physical world, that we all as humans we suffer, whether it's on different degrees, of course, but there is suffering in this world, and I believe that art is a force of healing.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's so true. I mean, like really, any type of art. I mean, music is really healing for me. But yeah, I mean, all of it, books, movies, paintings. I mean, it can all be a sort of healing device. That's really cool. I don't think anyone else has said that in that response to that question. It's interesting seeing how different people answer that question.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm curious to hear what everyone said. I think why are we all here? And I believe we're here to heal. I really do. So, you don't have to, we don't have to go into religion or, but I think on a simple level, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, but I believe we are here to heal. So I feel art, is a gift for, and to make this, I believe life is, it's not easy,
Right.
And humans, we suffer on some level, and through that we can find our own awakening. And I believe that art helps guide us. And if we can use art to fulfill ourselves and help us transform and find fulfillment in some way, and then we're using it to its purpose.
No,
and you said, whether it's music or anything like that,
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. And, I think that concept of healing probably can be found in any religion, really. Like if you boil it down to, I do a lot of interfaith kind of stuff. So I'm really interested in seeing what all the religions kind of have in common, and the same thing, how they all kind of say the same things sometimes. So yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, no, I love when I can get a little deep on the podcast. But,
sorry, I always tend to go there.
No, I love it. I love it. I was really excited to have you on because you talk a lot about spirituality on your website, and it's just very evident in your work, and I think it's great. So
yeah.
So where can people find you and your work?
So my website, michellesakhai.com. That's MichelleSakhai.com. Or on Instagram, which at Michelle Sakhai Art, all one word. And those two places are probably the best places. And all my upcoming shows, like I said, are on my website. You can my book is on my website, as well as I think it's on Amazon and also on Instagram too. So yeah, please DM me. I love hearing from you guys, and feel free to ask me any question. I'm pretty open.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. I will link to everything on findcreativeexpression.com as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. That was great.
Great. I hope so. Thank you.
I had such a great time talking to Michelle, and I hope you found it enjoyable as well. So, I always ask other people what kind of, music or movies or books or art they're really into right now. But, I never really talk about what I'm really into. So I thought it would be fun if I started doing a little section at the end where I just kind of talk about what I'm into. Maybe not every episode, but just, every now and then. So I recently watched the 1948 movie The Red Shoes, which I thought was absolutely incredible. First of all, it was very visually stunning. It looks amazing. It's in Technicolor. It's kind of surreal at some parts. I used to be a dancer from like age 5 to 14. So, I really love the ballet aspect of it. I also thought it was good to mention on the podcast because one of the kind of main themes or conflicts in the movie is, that conflict of art versus romantic love, which I think is always interesting. I mean, in my life and in a lot of the people's lives that I know, I don't feel like you need to choose between art and romantic love. I mean, I would say romantic love can often help art and help you as a creator, but it was also really beautiful and kind of tragic to see that conflict shown on screen. I will link to the trailer of The Red Shoes so you can watch that if you are interested. So I'm obsessed with making playlists on Spotify. I make a ton of them all the time. So I just made one called Summer Beginnings, which I'm really obsessed with. I kind of just keep listening to it over and over again. So I will link to that as well in case any of you want to check that out. As far as TV goes, I am kind of just rewatching New Girl. I feel like, there are like comfort TV shows. For me, Friends used to be a big one, which I mean, it still is, but also, Parks and Recreation and New Girl have kind of filled that spot as well. And Schitt's Creek. Yeah, so I've seen all of the New Girl shows, but I put it on when I just need like some kind of comfort TV, if that makes sense. And let's see, what am I reading? I'm listening to The Overstory by Richard Powers on audiobook. I'm like obsessed with audiobooks. I'm not very far in it, but so far it's really interesting. It's kind of the first part of it is kind of reads like a short story collection. I think in the latter half of the book, like all of these characters that he's introducing are kind of more connected, and there's kind of a more overarching story. But it's definitely interesting. Maybe I'll probably have more to say about it when I finish it. But yeah, I like to be always kind of in the middle of 3 books. So I like to be listening to an audiobook, reading an ebook, and reading a print book. So usually, if I'm reading a print book, I'll just read it, like I'll sit down and read it in one sitting, or 2 or 3 sittings, or I'll have a book that I can just kind of pick up whenever and read, in little bits and pieces. So the print book that I'm reading right now is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which I've read a million times, and it's one of my absolutely favorite books. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. And it's a good book to kind of just pick up and read little pieces of when you need, reminders to be present. And the ebook that I just started is called Spirit Legacy by E. Holmes. It's kind of a young adult ghost story, or, it kind of deals with the occult and astral projection and ghosts and haunted houses I'm not very far into it. I'm only a couple chapters in, but it's intriguing so far. I'll probably have more to say about that when I'm done reading it as well. But yeah, so that's what I'm watching and listening to and reading right now. So I also wanted to invite you all to my Facebook group. It's just called Find Creative Expression, and it's just a place where we can all, talk to each other as creative people and artistic people. We can bounce ideas off of each other and ask each other for feedback and resources and promote our work to each other and support each other. So definitely come join us on the Facebook group. You can find it at findcreativeexpression.com. And I'll link to everything that I mentioned in this episode on findcreativeexpression.com. So check that out. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can just find it in the description. Coming up on the next episode, I'm going to be talking to author Candace Robinson. Candace is another young adult author, and she is super prolific, so I am really excited to talk to her. So definitely tune in for that. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Find Creative Expression podcast. Please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah E. Crawford or youtube.com/Sarah Crawford. Also find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Sarah Crawford to support the podcast for just $1 a month. And that's Sarah, S-A-R-A, without an H. I hope you've been inspired today, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next podcast.